President, please be seated. The court is now back in session, and the chamber gives the floor to the deputy co-prosecutor to resume the questioning. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just time-wise, to let you know, I'd hoped to finish this morning. Things have gone a little slower the last few days. If I can proceed to the 11:30, and then I may need some additional time in the afternoon, not too much, hopefully, but if I can make that request at the end at 11:30, let you know whether I need another 30 minutes. Depends on how we proceed. I want to turn to some questions about the purge of the East Zone, Mr. Witness. And I want to start with a document, E3/1688. E3/1688. If I may provide this to the witness, Your Honor, it is a annotation or note that appears written by the witness on the cover page of the confession of Chap Mid, E3/1688, with your leave.
President, yes, please.
And if we can display this on the screen, this is the cover page from this individual who was a secretary of a district in Sector 22 of the East Zone. On this confession, you've written a note, Mr. Witness, and it reads, submit to pawn, and then it states the following in paragraph 2. Withdraw the name of Brother Chin, Region 22, Brother Mon, and Brother So. In principle, Brother number 2 has advised on 25 February 1978 that the names of Brother So, Region 23, Brother Mon, Sector 23, Sot 21, Chin 22, Tat and Sok, Division 170, and Tal, Division 290, must be withdrawn if they appear in this confession. My question to you, why did Noon Shea, brother number 2, why did he ask you to remove the names of these individuals from this confession?
This is the method or the reporting method of the confessions and documents to the upper echelon. After the report, and if there was an instruction by the upper echelon to remove any individuals, I would have to revise the document before that document was sent to the East. That is the chief of the East, Brother Pum. So this document is the evidence that I already sent it to the upper echelon, and the instruction was to remove certain individual and also the suspicious activities relating to these individuals.
Let me just read to you what you said in your testimony on 27 March 2012, document E1/54.1 at 10:26 to 10:29 in the morning. You were asked, question, do you know why Nuon Chea advised you of this to withdraw the names? Your answer, we removed those names because we did not want them to be aware that their names were implicated because this document was to be sent to the Eastern Zone. End of quote. Mr. Witness, what happened to the people who Nuon Chea had asked you to remove their names from this confession? What later happened to these people?
That was the temporary removal of the names, so that Brother Nuon could send the documents to Brother Pum for further implementation. Brother Ching, the secretary, was arrested at the same time when the party decided to arrest Brother Pum. Brother Mon was arrested under the decision of the party as well, when the decision by the party to arrest Brother Pum was made. Regarding Brother Tol, Brother Sot, Comrade Tat, and Comrade Sot had been arrested. First, they were in the divisions of the center. These people, the later, were arrested. Comrade Tat, Comrade Sok, and Comrade Tal had been arrested first. And the people from the east were arrested en masse on the day that Sapam was arrested.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Indeed, we have found all of these names in the OCIJ list, 4 of them close to the time you're talking about. I want to ask you about 2 of them that were arrested earlier, relatively soon after the time you wrote this note. Division 170 Secretary Sok K. Son, alias Sok, appears as number 2969 in the OCIJ list. He entered on the 4th of March, 1978, so a little more than a week after this note, and was executed on the 11th of May, 78. His wife and his sons also were sent to S21 later on the 17th of June, 78, and executed the next day, 18 June. Your Honors, these, you'll find their names in the OCIJ list at numbers. The wife is number 10758. The sons of Division 170 Secretary Sok are numbers 10753 and 754. And, Mr. Witness, the other person who was arrested closer to the time of your note was Sector 23 Secretary So, full name Uk Savan, alias Uk Nyat, alias So. He is number 5999, 5999 in the OCIJ list, arrested on the 17th of March, 78. His wife entered S21 on the 4th of April, was executed on the 5th of April. She is number 9065, 9065. His son entered on the 4th of April, 78, also number 9074. And his daughter entered on the 4th of April, 78, and was executed on the 24th. Your Honors, that is OCIJ number 9067. My question, Mr. Witness, these two cadres and their families, Division 170 Secretary Sok, Sector 23 Secretary So. Did Noon Che ever tell you why these cadres, their wives and children, were arrested and sent to S21? What was the reason for these people being arrested?
I spent very minimal time working with Nguyen Jie. Usually the meeting with Nguyen Jie lasted not more than 10 minutes. So after he received the documents, he instructed Sao Pham to implement. I heard from Kyo about Sao Pham. I refer to Sun Sen when I said Brother Kyo. He had a radio communication with me, I mean Brother Kyo. He says that soldiers had been removed for study sessions during the time that Vietnamese were approaching. Let me clarify that Sok and I used to work under him, I mean Brother Kyo. So after the arrest of Chak Kray, Angka replaced Chak Kray with Sok. So Sok and I work well with one another, and at the time it was said that Sok shows his suspicious activities. I do not know about So's activity at the time. This is all I can tell you.
Do you remember anything Nguyen Che ever said about the people from the East Zone? And later on, after the time of the note we just looked, did you at some point receive some instructions from Nguyen Che relating to prisoners from the East Zone?
Thank you. The prisoners who were sent from the east into S21 were interrogated by S21. He did not further instruct us on those prisoners. He was waiting for the confessions of those prisoners from the east.
And later on, at some point in 1978, did you receive any instructions from Nguyen Che relating to the executions of prisoners from the East Zone?
Let me tell you of what I can recall. That happened a long time ago. At the time, the situation was widely known or clear. As I said, at S21, when the specific zone, I mean members of specific zone were to be arrested en masse, I was always instructed to smash the prisoners who were detained at S21 to reserve space for the newcomers. So concerning the arrest of the East Zone cadres, that happened from time to time before that period. In relation to arrest of Phum in June 1978, that was an incident. And after 1978, prisoners were sent into S21 in a large group. Let me clarify the point once again. The one who was in charge of sending people into S21 was Comrade Rương, the assistant to the General Staff. He sent people to me. And people were sent into S21 en masse after the arrest of Brother Phum. From that time onward, 20 to 30 people were sent in on one morning. Let me clarify. Pol Pot never made a mention about the arrest at S21, but there was one day the telephone rang and I went to pick up the telephone, and at the time Rương was on the telephone and he said, was more sent into S21, and at the time I replied, how could you want to know about the S21? And at that time I was thinking why Comrade Rương was poking his finger into S21 business. And a while later, Rương telephoned me again and told me to wait to see a brother. And at the time, I did not know who he was referring to. And I knew that it was Pol Pot. And Pol Pot asked me whether more was sent in, and I realized that more was Mon rather. Mon, his original name was Pon. Si Thon. He was first the deputy of the General Staff, and after the arrest of Li Pai, Mon became the head of General Staff in the East. Mon was engaged in the activity of the revolution. Heng, Pan Yut, and Siton were considered traitors. Siton was Mon. So at the time, Pol Pot was interested whether or not Mon was sent into S21. And as I said, people were sent into S21 en masse at the time.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. And try to focus you on specific issues as best I can. I appreciate your answers. Just one point of clarification. The Comrade Rương you just referred to, who called you, who was an assistant to the General Staff, is that the same Rương who was the Secretary of Division 801 or a different person?
Comrade Rương, the assistant to the General Staff, later he was appointed to be an assistant to General Staff. I do not know what happened, why the assistant to the General Staff was arrested. At first, Rương was not arrested, but later on, Rương, San, and another individual, that is Paul, were also arrested.
Let me stop you. When you talk about Rương and San being arrested, you're talking about events much later than 1979. Am I correct?
Bad. Let me clarify the point. There were two individuals. One is Rương, 801, and another one is Rương, Assistant to General Staff.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. President, at this time I'd like to present to the witness document E3-8463, E3-8463, some specific list from within that document. That is a list of prisoners executed on 27 May 78, with your leave.
President, yes, please.
Mr. Witness, the document I'm giving to you and the Khmer ERN pages of this list run from Khmer 00016-039 through 74, and then the English translation in E3-8463 is the translation for those pages. This is a list of prisoners, titled List of Prisoners Smashed on 27 May 1978, if we can show the top of the list. And it includes a total of 582 prisoners, most from the East Zone. If you look, the first 316 prisoners on this execution list are all from Sector 23 of the East Zone. And if you could also look towards the end of the list when you have an opportunity, particularly at prisoner numbers 526 through 556, 526 through 556 at the end of this list. These prisoners are indicated or recorded as arriving on the 28th of May 1978, suggesting that these executions had carried over until the next day. My question to you, first question, this execution list of many prisoners, mostly from the East Zone, began on 27 May 1978. Do you recall what had taken place in the East Zone 2 days earlier on the 25th of May 1978? Do you remember the date 25 May 1978 and what the significance of that date, what took place 2 days before these executions began?
As I indicated earlier, PUM and members of the Committee of the East Zone, together with the combatants, were arrested in June 1978. So there were instructions before that date that said all prisoners had to be withdrawn or removed to reserve space for newcomers. So the event of sending prisoners to Chiang Ai happened at that time in large number, so that we were ready to receive new prisoners.
And who was it that instructed you, when you say these prisoners were removed to Chiang Ai, you mean that these 580 people were sent to be executed, is that correct?
Brother Nguyen, instructed on the prisoners, but not the exact of prisoners to be removed. I was called to receive the instruction. He said that I had to remove prisoners to the maximum. After I returned from the meeting, I went to see Ho to relay the instruction that prisoners had to be removed to the maximum. So we started to know that the purge of the East Zone would take place very soon. So the instruction once again was that I had to remove the prisoners to the maximum. So as I was in charge of S21, I could understand the instruction, what it meant. So that instruction was given closer to the date, the date that the decision was made to arrest Salpum and other subordinates, his other subordinates.
And in your past testimony, you've described an occasion where you received an order from Nuon Chea to execute several hundred East Zoners before they had been interrogated. Was that this occasion, the executions that are reflected in this list in late May 78, or was that something that took place later in the year, if you remember?
During the year, there was an event where the East Zoners were gathered and sent. But through my recollection, there was only one occasion that those people were removed en masse, and that happened on the 3rd of January 1979. Brother Nuon called me and gave me instruction to remove all the prisoners, and I asked about the Vietnamese, the Yuen, and he said, we deal with that later. And then I asked him about those from YO8 or Y8, including Dutchman. And of course, I cannot recall the English names properly. So I request to keep 4 individuals from Joe 8, and he said, then I had to be responsible for that. So when I returned, I instructed her to remove all the prisoners. And he came to tell me that all had been removed. Then I instructed him to let the young interrogators interrogated the remaining 4 from your 8. So allow me to confirm. It is possible that this mass removal happened either on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th of January 79.
I'll ask you a few questions about the order and the execution of the last remaining prisoners at S21 later. In terms of the killings of East Zone prisoners, this large execution that took place to clear out room from the prison, as you said, were there any further large executions of East Zone prisoners after 27 or 28 May, after the execution of the 580 people on this list? Were there further large executions of East Zone prisoners?
It happened a long time ago, but from my recollection, There was one occasion when East zoners were brought in trucks. They were placed into cells, but they were not interrogated, and they were put back onto the trucks and sent for execution. So they were brought in the morning on that day, and in the evening they were put back on trucks and sent for execution. There were 200 or 300 of them from my recollection.
And who was it that ordered you to take these people immediately out for execution without interrogation?
The same. That is, it was Brother Noon.
I want to turn now to a meeting that you've described that you attended in October 1978 or around then. Do you recall being one of the participants who attended a political education session that was led by Pol Pot sometime in October 1978? And can you tell the court what instructions were given by Pol Pot at that meeting?
At that time, I went for a study session along with 2 other cadres, that is Ho and Hui. And it was at Samarat Buddhist Institute on the upper floor. And at the lower floor, it was where Brother Noon worked, and later on where Brother Haim worked. During the study session, the content of the presentation was in 2 parts. The first part was about the 12 principles of morality, and that the principles were reiterated. And the second part of the training was about the progressive cooperative. They said that in China they built exemplary cooperative, and here in Cambodia we would build progressive cooperative, that each person has to have a house with a vegetable growing around the house.
Did you receive any instructions from Pol Pot specifically relating to prisoners, arrests, interrogations at this meeting? And can you tell us specifically what the Pol Pot said about that?
He spoke about the matter, but it seems that the situation seems to be less intensive, and that the interrogation should ease. And he also said the center never gave instruction to the police. As for the Khmer Sao did not have anything to eat, so they went to rest in the forest, and we could bring them in and give them rice to eat. And that should deal with the problem. And in relation to the circular that was issued about those who joined the CIA in which particular year that they would be pardoned by the party. And a few days later I was called by Brother Noon, and I did not know how to react because the party instruction was not to continue the interrogation. So what should I do with the remaining prisoners? And Brother Nun said, "Oh, now that you are very well versed with the party's line." And just based on that, I resumed interrogating the remaining prisoners.
I'd like you to look at a note that appears in one of the interrogators' notebooks. Mr. President, this is the notebook that I think is at least the first pages are from Pon or Tui. It's document E3/834, E3/834, Khmer page 000775518 at the bottom of that page, English 0018452, no French translation. If I may have this handed to the witness and also show the excerpt of the notes on the screen with your leave.
Yes.
Mr. Witness, these are the page that's just been handed to you, and you'll see a green highlight around the part I want you to focus on. And if we can show this on the screen, if we have that. These are notes from the interrogators dated from the 8th of October, 1978. And the note that I want to focus on states as follows, quote, "In the near term, we have plans to interrogate all of the Khmer without beatings and getting 80% confessions. No beatings and getting very detailed confessions, 70%. As for the foreigners, the Yun, the imperialist CIA, we apply absolute special branch methods, completely and totally, permanently. Let me repeat that. As for the foreigners, the Yun, the imperialist CIA, we apply absolute special branch methods, completely and totally, permanently. Also, in this temporary period, the task of defense will temporarily apply the old principles absolutely and totally." End of quote. So these notes indicate that, thank you, these notes indicate that at some time in the future there were plans to interrogate Khmer prisoners without beatings, but for foreigners, Vietnamese, CIA, you would continue to apply absolute special branch methods, but that in the interim, the temporary period, old principles would be continued to be applied. My first question, did you have a meeting with your interrogators after your discussions with Pol Pot and Noon Chea? And do you know, are these instructions that you conveyed based on your communications with Pol Pot and Noon Chea?
Allow me to first respond to your question with my observation. I only saw 2 pages of this document, as I stated earlier. During the investigation stage, the OCP referred to it as a Tui Pont document, but to my review, this is not Tui's document, because Un actually mentioned somewhere there, Tui actually stained some pages of the document. And I saw a signature of Tui. And allow me to clarify it again that I have not seen that document during the investigation stage, as well as during my testimony on the 19th of March 2012. Now let me refer to the content of this document, though I do not want to say who owns that document. The content related to the instructions given by Pol Pot during the time that I attended the training session where he taught. I left it with Ho, and Hoi remained at the training session. Then we called the interrogators for the presentation of those documents that night, and it lasted for 2 hours, and next morning I returned to the training session again, and the content of course was related to the presentation made by Pol Pot.
Now it says in these notes that the plan in the future was to not have beatings with the Khmer prisoners, but to continue the old special branch methods for Vietnamese and other foreigners. What was the reason? Did Pol Pot explain the reason for that?
That was the principle and the objective of S21 in interrogating prisoners. We had experience and we could draw lessons from those experiences. So for the Khmer prisoners, there was no need to beat them, and that we could obtain 70% of the detailed confessions. And that's what I provided to the interrogators. As for the June, the practice remained the same. And of course, the same applied to CIA agents. The June, the CIA had to be beaten. But for Brother Paul's instructions, all interrogations had to be stopped.
It says in the notes here that sometime in the near future you would change the methods of interrogations and not use beatings for the Khmer prisoners. But for a temporary period, the old methods would continue for all prisoners. Was it Pol Pot who told you to continue for a temporary period, or was it Noon Chea in your talk with him a few days later who gave you the instruction to continue applying old methods for the interim period?
I have stated that during the study session, the idea of stop using torture was the idea of S21. For that reason, it is my report that we should stop beating Khmer prisoners. And the decision by Brother Paul on that day was to stop all interrogations. And it could also imply that no more arrests should be made. Later on, Brother Noon called me to work, and I did not know what to react because I told my subordinates to stop interrogating, and I couldn't answer some of his questions. And he actually teased me that I knew well about the party's line. And after I left, I held meetings with my subordinates to resume the interrogation. So that was the development at the time.
Let me turn to another subject. I want to ask you a few questions relating to Born Vet, someone you had worked for back in the period at M13, who had become a member of the Standing Committee. Can you tell us where and when was Born Vet arrested?
Brother Vaughan was arrested with On and Go, and he was sent to S21. And Comrade Lin was the one who actually went to arrest them, and they were the guard of the party center, and Mok was actually in charge of the operation, and they were arrested at the party center after the meeting concluded. Through a joke made by Brother Nguyen's wife that the Pope was so scared and he was hiding himself under the bed. As for Pope, that is when I met him at K18, he said that there was an order from Pol Pot to make the arrest. Of course, they were not cuffed, but the hands were tied with a plastic rope. So Von Wade was sent to S21 at around 5:30 or 6 in the afternoon after he was arrested at the party center's office.
And do I understand correctly that did these arrests take place at the end of a meeting of either a party congress or a central committee meeting? Did these arrests take place so that the other members of the central committee or center who were there saw these people being arrested?
I did not know who saw the arrest. There were some who could not be there, and it was Brother Paul. As usually, he did not want to be present at such a traveling spot, and the person who was in charge of the operation was Brother Mok. And those who conducted the arrest belongs to Lin's group. And as I said, I met Pope in around 1989. He said that Brother Paul stopped Pope from going to the house. And only after the arrest, Brother Pol Pot said, how was the show? Was it a good show? So I did not know about who actually witnessed the arrest. Maybe some new members of the center did not witness the arrest. Here I refer to Sand and Ruan.
Let's turn to the interrogation of Born Vet. Who conducted his interrogation? Was any torture used, and if so, what types of torture? And what instructions did you get from your superior about the interrogation of Born Vet?
On the issue of the interrogation of Brother Vaughan, I assigned Pon to do it. Vaughan was arrested on the eve of 2nd November 78. And I went to see him and I asked him some questions about Brother Paul. And Brother Vaughan said that Brother Paul was a two-faced person or a paranoia person, and he did not trust anyone except Brother Van. And he said that he said that he had about 5,000 or 50,000 workers under his command, and that they were of concern of him using the force. I used the word Tradevich, that is paranoia, who was thinking constantly about his own safety and security, that he was afraid that he would be assassinated. So in French or English, it's more or less similar to the term paranoia. And before I approached him, he shouted at me that Jew murderer. I actually did not look at his face. I looked down and I still approached him, since he was a former professor and he was the one who inducted me into the party. And as for the interrogation, it was Brother Pon that I assigned him to do it, and I only made one briefly before I allowed Pon to interrogate Brother Vaughan. He used torture during the interrogation because during the month of November the weather was rather cool, and he used a fence and with the water splashing behind the fence in order to spray it to make Brother Vaughan shiver. There was a form of torture inflicted upon Vaughan by Comrade Pon.
Let me ask you for a little clarification here, and let me read from your May 1999 interview. And just for the record, I could not remember. I was blanking on the name yesterday. So the record is clear. This is E3 347, E3/347 interview conducted from the 4th to the 6th of May 1999, for which there are audio tapes. And this was an interview by Christophe Pechot from the UN High Commission for Human Rights. At Khmer 00160905, English 00185-026, French 00160948-49. This is what you said in May 1999. Quote, Comrade Pon and Vorn Vet. When he was not satisfied with Vorn Vet's confession, he invited him to talk about the Yuen, that the Yuen had attacked. Would we win or lose? While talking about this, Vorn Vet said the Yuen would win. He put ice on Vorn Vet. He was old and he got cold. The torture used on Vorn Vet was ice water. They put ice in water and they bathed him in it. Vorn Vet was bathed in ice water and turned on a fan. Correct. End of quote. Can you clarify, was Vorn Vet put into cold water with ice, or was he simply sprayed with cold water and a fan put on him, or are you not sure what exactly was done to him?
think there was a discussion about the matter that I was accused of placing Brother Ron into a fridge. And that was Alexander Bate at the time. And I responded that if one weight was put in a fridge, what was the need to turn on a fan? In fact, ice was put into a container and the water was poured into it. Then they splashed that cold water onto him and then they turned on a fan.
Mr. President, I anticipate I'll do my best, with your leave, if I could have an additional 30 or 40 minutes after lunch to finish my questioning. I believe I'll be able to finish. So that would be my request.
President, the Chamber will grant you an additional 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
It is now convenient for our lunch break. We take a break now and resumed at 1:30 this afternoon to continue our proceedings. Security personnel are set to take case in point and witness to the waiting rooms individually downstairs and have case in point returns to the courtroom before 1:30. As for the witness, invite him back into the courtroom at 1:30 this afternoon. The court is